Hello again and welcome to the People's Lawyer channel. This series of talks is called Building Resilience to Navigate the Apocalypse, Purple Pilling. We're in part 2, which is the War on Humanity. Now, the War on Humanity is also known as the Third World War. For those of you who think that the Third World War could be between the East and the West, or between Russia and Ukraine, or between Russia and the United States, it's all nonsense. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all a distraction. It's designed to lower your frequency and put you in fear. And above all, to stop you from realizing that the war, known as the Third World War, is against us, you, me, and every other human being, or every other man, woman, boy, and girl, for those who don't like the word human, on the planet. Let's have a look at what this entails. Let's have a look at the damage that's being done on so many levels to mankind. Spiritually, we're having our pineal gland compromised, and that's been the case for quite some time. Morally, we're having our heart-brain connection severed. So they send us to school where there's no room for the heart or for right brain, creative, imaginative, compassionate thinking or feeling or doing. There's no room. It's a clinical environment. It's a boot camp, and it's military training. It's training to actually not fight the Third World War, but to lose it before you even realize it's happening. Mentally, the hippocampus is being damaged and other parts of the neofrontal or prefrontal cortex, but in particular, hippocampus is the part of the brain that helps you think straight. It's your data storage so that you can get your reference points right, so that when you're faced with a so-called alleged pandemic, you know that it's not real because you know what a pandemic should look like. And I'm not so sure that we've ever had one, certainly not a real one in the history of mankind. Emotionally, there's rampant fear porn all over the place. Even the weather maps now on the TV have flaming or flaring red symbolism for when the temperature goes up barely above room temperature. It's just amazing. Physically, we have zombie cells. Those zombie cells are dead cells that have not been flushed out of the system, and those are zombie cells. Those are holding you down. Those are preventing a true flow from the pineal, from information from the higher realms, from your true intuition. It's like a blockage, it's stagnation. And those are interestingly called zombie cells because those are the cells that can be activated by frequencies and technologies and make you do things, make your body dance when it wants to sit, makes your mind think unnatural thoughts. All kinds of strange, weird, and wonderful events are about to occur, basically because we are already in a semi-zombified state. Socially and culturally, it's groupthink, arguably the greatest threat to humanity of all. Because if everybody is made to think the same thoughts, all the globalists have to do, the cabal, those who control the narrative, all they have to do is to put one piece of intellectual or moral poison into the equation and everybody swallows it whole. So groupthink is a major existential threat. More details about the damage to the pineal. It's particularly damaged by aluminium, which is being put into injections. It's also being dropped from the skies, the chemtrails. Glyphosate is in the food chain. Fluoride is in the water supply, and Wi-Fi and electromagnetic frequencies are a generalized global worldwide phenomenon, and they are not proven to be safe to mankind. They are unnatural frequencies, distorted frequencies, and there has been no health and safety impact done. And what little health and safety impact has been done really focuses on the heat impact, heat to the skin, but it ignores the fact that they can penetrate deep inside the body to the cells and affect change. And as we know, those who know about epigenetics, it's our environment that affects our DNA. So if our environment is toxic, if it's receiving distorted toxic signals, then our cells will reflect that toxicity. Moral damage, the heart-brain connection is being, as I suggested before, compromised by loveless, sterile schooling environments, dogmatic totalitarian platforms in the classroom where The children only get 12 seconds per hour to speak and be themselves. Once you realize that the teacher has 90% of class time and the pupils, on average about 30, have to share in 10%, that works out at 12 seconds per class hour for you to make a noise and make a meaningful noise, which most of the time will simply be spent obeying, complying, and justifying why you haven't obeyed or complied. In other words, this is annihilation. It's menticide. That's a word that I'm going to use again and again. It's the killing of the human spirit. It's paving the way for the replacement of Homo sapiens with a Robo sapiens, and then Robo sapiens with cyborg. It's just a relentless agenda. The environment in the culture, not just the schoolroom, is godless. It's faithless and godless. Well, there's the next word there, faithless. There is rampant cynicism, rampant skepticism. Cynicism is the bitter and twisted side of skepticism. Healthy skepticism is fine. It protects you from all kinds of twisted, lying, manipulative, corrupt agendas. But cynicism actually affects your health, and there it is also on the page. All these go hand in hand with rampant humanist, anti-faith, godless materialism, where God is cash, God is material status. It's flashy new cars, it's flashy holidays, it's flashy rings, and flashy everything, basically. It's a dereliction of the internal truth, which is that God is within, and your connection to divinity can only be respected by going inward. More about that later in this series. Mental damage is done to the hippocampus, which is the indoctrination and menticide, there's that word again, and humiliation and degradation that is the schooling system. Dumbing down, that also takes place. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're given nonsense information and expected to treat it as gospel, not allowed to question it. The devices that we're using are designed to make us be able to do. In other words, we're less and less self-reliant, less and less resilient, more and more codependent on AI, algorithms, and gadgets. So that is really annihilating humanity's or mankind's potential. It's making us passive. So passivity features on this mental damage. Nobody wants to be self-initiating, self-reliant, self-responsible. Passivity, leave it to somebody else. Always blame somebody else. If you leave it to somebody else, then you've got somebody to blame. And this is part of the mass formation, which is creating generation after generation, increasing in numbers, approaching 100%, I would say, but not quite there yet, thankfully, of narcissists. Narcissists only know their own needs. They have no compassion, and they cannot feel for other people. They can barely feel for themselves. So they're kind of already half robotized. And there's the other factor, not allowed to ask questions. When you can't ask questions, you're basically being cancelled. Simply being not allowed, disallowed, barred from asking questions, that is already cancel culture. So as I've suggested in other lectures, cancel culture and social credit already starts in infancy, in the classroom, and with some dysfunctional parents as well. I don't want to let parents off the hook. If you do not allow your children to question things, and in particular to question you, then you are showing symptoms of rampant narcissism, and you are part of the problem. Physically, yes, we've already mentioned zombie cells, sedentary lifestyle, laziness, apathy, can't be bothered itis. It's too much of an effort. I'll only get out of bed for £500 a day, that kind of attitude, which is materialism gone crazy. Toxic lifestyle and nutrition, poor life choices, because all the glamour is in the toxic lifestyle choices. The sexy lifestyle, it's the sexy partner, it's the sexy car. Everything is sold by sex. It's the glamour models selling sex and people's dopamine addiction, because when you are dragged up through a classroom and in some toxic family environments, you become basically dependent on dopamine hits, because you now have a happiness deficit. You're not happy, you're traumatized, you're stressed. Therefore, you need to hop from the unhappiness or over the unhappiness like a stepping stone from dopamine hit, in other words, pleasure hit after pleasure hit, in effect, walking the tightrope over the sea of unhappiness and despair and indifference and depression and all kinds of clinical issues, anxiety as well. So this would include alcohol addiction, sex addiction, gambling addiction, addiction to anything, basically. Hyperactivity addiction, TV addiction, you name it. If you're living a lifestyle that is not cool, calm and collected, objective, where you're breathing deeply, and I'll explore this more in later parts in this series, then you are trying to compensate for a lack of happiness or a lack of contentment. So there's a discontent. You'll look outside to blame all kinds of other things, and you'll project it outwards, especially if you're a narcissist, but really the issue is inside of you. We've all been there. I'm not preaching. I'm just relating my experience, my own personal experience, and also observations of what's going on in the world. Sociocultural groupthink is very dangerous. It comes from peer group pressure. It's all about insecurity. We have to feel we belong, and that's on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But the dark side of it is this attachment to the group. It's not feeling able to have our own individual identity and to have our own thoughts, feelings, and lifestyle. We succumb way too easily. In fact, we hardly succumb. We're stuck to the group. This is the hive mind that's been created over many decades, if not longer. If you like, the B system is in place. All it will be doing is feeding the hive mind. It won't need to create it. It will already have been created. The B system will just feed the hive mind, give the hive mind a reason to live and a reason to serve whom or what? Well, to serve the beast and all those preferred cabal agents of the beast. And it's groupthink that was the underlying problem. People pleasing, again, this is part of the package that you go to school and you learn to please authority, to be artificially deferential to authority. We shouldn't be giving authority any deference because we are the authority, we are the law, and we are everything. We are fractal versions of divinity, but we have surrendered our identity and we've given away our power. We need to take it back quickly. Narcissism is the sociocultural byproduct of a me culture, of a pleasure-seeking, dopamine-fueled culture, of a curriculum delivered on a plate culture where everything is checking boxes. It's not independent thinking. It's not critical thinking. It's not justifying your actions. It's never being accountable. It's basically not acknowledging the needs of others. And the narcissistic culture is fostered by this idea of the collective, the greater good, for the good of others, for the greater good. Who are these others? What is the greater good? It's never defined. It's abstract. The only people that we need to take into account after we've worked on ourselves are those in our immediate environment. Those are the only ones that we directly affect. Our actions should therefore take into account those around us, our neighbors, our family, our friends. But we're being made to adjust our thinking, feeling, and actions for an invisible collective, which of course is a form of blackmail to modify and manipulate actions of the masses. And there we have it on the last line of the screen: mass formation, hypnosis, or psychosis. Once you have given people reason for despair, reason not to feel good about themselves, a form of self-loathing because they are basically annihilated at school and made to feel bad, made to feel that school approval is essential. They need certificates, they need qualifications, they need the yes, you can. They need the AI to say, transaction approved. You put them in a very low state of morale, and they're now looking for something to raise up their morale, to bring them back to a level playing field. And that can be a common enemy. So the common enemy, which is either terrorists or viruses or climate collapse, is an enemy. And the enemy of the climate, as suggested by the Club of Rome in 1992, is humanity itself. It's mankind itself. So mankind is being promoted as its own worst enemy, which is utter nonsense. It's nonsense on a global scale, but individually, we are our own worst enemy, but only individually, because we're making poor choices and we're being scammed and conned, and we're not realizing that. Most people never take a stand when things get tough, because they've spent their whole lives being told to just sit down and shut up. We are resisting, and we are building our resilience to resist, but who or what exactly are we resisting, apart from our own demons and our own inner feelings of inadequacy and fears? Well, here's a clue. The NATO headquarters, when viewed from above, spell out the shape of the headquarters, spell out SS. So we're looking at global Nazism. And global Nazism has its own dangers, and you might think of it as a kind of military outfit, and it is in some respects, but there's dangers lurking behind Nazism, and I'll spell them out in a minute. Let's take a quote from Steiner. Quote, "The materialistic physician will be entrusted with expelling the soul from mankind." So there's a clue as to what the real threat is. It's medical. You can only be annihilated truly and permanently medically. If you're killed on a battlefield by a soldier, your soul goes to where it's supposed to go, and it's a neutral event. You may die before your time, but your soul is safe. And the Gospel of Matthew gives us a clue. Quote, "Do not fear those who can kill the body but not soul, rather be afraid of him who can destroy both soul and body in the life after death." So what that means is that ultimately the technology of today is equipped to trap our soul forever. The escape route is to avoid all exposure to and contact with the eugenics, the medical eugenics, and the interference with humanity's collective soul, which is coming very soon. It's already started, but it's going to be rolled out. It's going to be scaled up very soon, late 2024, early 2025, via the next scamdemic, which will be called bird flu. More about that later. Quote, "For so long as the wickedness is hidden, it is strong, but when it is recognized, it is dissolved. When it is revealed, it perishes." What we're looking at there is the idea that when you acknowledge the enemy of humanity, of mankind, the enemy is the darkness, the dark force, the controlling forces. I've defined in the past evil, and in fact, there's an entire book written about it. Evil is defined as control. Anything or anyone that wishes to control you against your better instincts, against your better nature, against your natural volition, is by definition evil. And that can be the evil of the cabal, and it can be the evil of the narcissist in your life. The defining element or the defining feature of a narcissist or of narcissism is control. A control freak is by definition a narcissist. There we are. That's the summary, in my opinion, of what we're up against. Nazi eugenicists who do not believe that we have a right to live, except the right that they grant us. Human groupthink, and that's us being captured mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, morally, socially, culturally. Groupthink, that's also what we're up against. Our own shadow, our own fears, our own denial. When we deny our own shadow, we go into what's known as positive toxicity, or toxic positivity is a better way of describing it, which means that we become weak on our own lies. We lie to ourselves. It's a form of self-delusion. When we say to people, "Oh, don't put that out, it's fear porn, it's dark, it's too dark." No, it's dark because we are shining the light, and because we're shining with light, it shows up how dark it is. And when we show it up, it's no longer dark. When we hide it, it remains in the dark and it maintains a power over us. We are so powerful, our 50 trillion cells and 35 billion volts in potential, we are so powerful that we can annihilate anything, but we have to be conscious of what we are annihilating, including our own internal toxicity. And that's our superpower, our purple-pilled superpower. As soon as we become conscious of the toxicity in our own system, we can cancel it, and then we can move on in a much stronger position and help win this war on humanity. Collectively, there's a shadow that the Native Americans called Wetiko, and it's kind of a worm, it's a virus that affects humanity as a whole. And if enough of us take on our own individual shadow, the power of that will cancel the collective human shadow, and there'll be a section of humanity with its collective shadow removed that will transcend to another dimension. There'll be another section of humanity that will not be part of that process and will go back into another life and face the same old challenges, the same old game. At the end of the day, it's just the game of life. And they will be replaying the game of life, which is to dispel the collective human shadow. And finally, what we're up against is, until further notice, and increasingly so, is something I mentioned in part one, AI, Bluetooth, low energy mesh network. So LE stands for low energy. It doesn't require any power. It powers itself up. And in particular, it powers itself up from our involvement. When we hold a device, they now have a system that can tap into our auric field, our energy field, and draw enough power from the ultimate source of power, which is us. There doesn't need to be an artificial power source. Electricity is overrated. We are the superpower. But this low energy mesh network can draw power from us, and it draws its intelligence from AI chips. And ultimately, everything that we do, say, think, or feel is drawn in, it's data harvested into the beast system, and that's how humanity or mankind is extinguished, and something else is put in its place. Something else that does not require oxygen, which is why they want zero carbon, which is in effect zero oxygen. As I mentioned before, the next existential threat is known as bird flu. They're having a summit in October, and they are talking about mass fatalities and managing crises and all kinds of weird and wonderful things. This will in effect be the kind of tabletop exercise that they did, known as Event 201, that happened 3 or 4 months before COVID was rolled out. If you read between the lines and if you read the tea leaves, it looks as though if they are repeating, because they are very unimaginative, these people. They have a very stiff playbook. It's only ever rinse and repeat. They will be rolling this out late 2024, early 2025. And because it will coincide with the rollout of 5G, 2019 was trial version, 2025 will be the real version, in my opinion. And that will cause mass fatalities when the frequencies of the new technologies hit the biosensors and the nanotechnology that's been inserted into the human cellular structure via the injections and via ingesting all kinds of other nonsense and exposure to toxic air, water, food, environments, plastic, you name it. We're looking at an actual pandemic because people really will be dying. They will not have to massage the figures. People really will be dying, especially children, because they have masks in schools, Wi-Fi in schools. They've been giving children nasal sprays. They'll give them jabs to protect them, flu jabs. And those flu jabs will also contain other things. They will be able to concoct something that will frighten almost everyone to death. And we have to be ready. And we'll look at future-proofing and rapid response in future installments of this series. They cannot harm you. There's only a few of them. There's billions of us. Compulsive liars shouldn't frighten you. And that's the globalists. They have no power over you. Their lies have no power. But what has power is the gullibility of the group thinkers. They can harm no one if no one listens to them. Compulsive believers, so that's the group thinkers, the narcissists, On the other hand, they should terrify you. Believers are the liars' enablers. And we saw what we learned from COVID, alleged COVID, the alleged COVID, alleged pandemic, was it was the snitches that rang the police. The police were blissfully ignorant of what we were doing. They couldn't care less. They're paid anyway. But when the snitches rang the police were galvanized into action. It's the compulsive, narcissistic, mainstream believers. And they are believers. They have true faith in the narrative. It's a religion to them. COVID was a religion. Bird flu will be their next religion. And so we will be seen as heretics. And heretics often have a very dark outcome. Whenever one person stands up and says, wait a second, this is wrong, it helps other people to do the same. As we go along through this series, we'll explore what this means, but essentially, we're not waiting for others to stand up. We're the ones that we've been waiting for, and when we stand up, it sends out a ripple effect. There is nothing to fear apart from fear itself, and if you do nothing, you are not contributing to the recovery of mankind from a sickness that has ailed it for millennia. If you wish to be part of the solution and to be able to look your grandchildren in the eyes, so that when they say, what did you do, granddad or grandma, before AI took over the world, you want to be able to say that at least you tried, you did your best. And hopefully, your best will involve AI not even taking over the world, just being used in the correct proportion to its utility. In other words, we are the masters of AI, and it's used simply to help us streamline our lives. We do it without surveillance cameras. We don't need surveillance cameras, and that's another day's work, which we'll explore later on. Thank you so much for watching part 2 of the series, Building Resilience to Navigate the Apocalypse, Purple Pilling. Watch out for parts 3, 4, 5, and 6. There may even be a part 7, tying everything up into a nice, neat summary. Watch out for talks. Watch out for all kinds of contributions on Telegram and elsewhere. Once again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you very soon. Bye for now.